The transport ship moved slowly through space toward the massive orbital station that hung like a metal moon above the planet Kepler Prime. Jake Morrison pressed his face against the small window and watched the structure grow larger as they approached. The station was huge and shaped like a wheel with many spokes reaching out from the center. Lights blinked along its surface and smaller ships moved around it like insects around a bright lamp. Jake was not what most people would expect from a human diplomat. He was average height with brown hair and blue eyes. His face looked friendly, but there was something about his eyes that seemed to watch everything around him. He wore a simple dark blue suit that looked normal but felt different somehow. The fabric was too smooth and the cut was too perfect for regular clothing. Amy Carter sat beside him reading through files on her tablet. She was his assistant and had been working with him for 2 years. She had blonde hair tied back in a neat ponytail and wore glasses that made her look smart and professional. Amy looked like any other government worker, but she moved with the same careful awareness as Jake. Her fingers typed quickly on the tablet, but her eyes kept glancing at the security screens showing other passengers on the transport. The captain of the transport ship was a tall alien with blue skin and 4 arms. He belonged to a species called the Nexari, who were known for being good at mathematics and engineering. The captain spoke to Jake in perfect English, which surprised many humans, but Jake did not seem surprised at all. "Ambassador Morrison, we will arrive at Galactic Council Station in 30 minutes, the captain said with his voice sounding like music through a computer. "Your quarters are ready and the welcome ceremony will begin 2 hours after docking." Jake nodded and smiled the same diplomatic smile he had been practicing for months. "Thank you, Captain Zethrix. I am looking forward to meeting the other delegates." Amy looked up from her tablet. "Sir, the latest reports show 47 different species will be represented at this council session. The Corvin Empire has sent their military attaché, General Grimm, and the hegemony delegation is led by Chairman Vextax himself." Jake memorized the information quickly. His mind worked like a computer, filing away every detail about the alien species, their languages, their customs, and their military capabilities. Most diplomats would focus on trade agreements and cultural exchanges, but Jake found himself thinking about guard positions, weapon systems, and escape routes. The transport ship docked. With a soft thump that barely shook the passenger compartment, Jake gathered his single bag, which was lighter than it should be and heavier than it looked. Amy collected her equipment cases and they walked toward the airlock together. The docking bay was enormous with a ceiling that disappeared into shadows high above. Hundreds of different alien species moved through the area. Some walked on 2 legs like humans, while others floated or crawled or rolled along the floor. The air was filled with strange sounds as different species spoke in their own languages. A delegation of 3 aliens approached Jake and Amy. The leader was Chairman Vextax of the hegemony. He was 7 feet tall with gray skin and large black eyes. His body was thin and his movements were slow and careful. Behind him stood Security Chief Morden, who belonged to a species called arachnoids. Morden had 6 arms and looked like a giant spider that had learned to walk upright. The 3rd alien was smaller with green scales and belonged to a species Jake recognized as the Zephyrians. "Welcome to Galactic Council Station, Ambassador Morrison," Chairman Vextax said in English that sounded strange coming from his throat. "We are pleased that humanity has chosen to participate in galactic politics." Jake stepped forward and performed the traditional hegemony greeting by placing his right hand over his heart and bowing slightly. This surprised the aliens because most humans did not know their customs. "Thank you, Chairman Vextax. Humanity is honored to be here and we hope to build strong relationships with all council members." Security Chief Morden stepped closer, and his 6 arms moved in patterns that Jake recognized as a threat assessment. "Human Morrison, your species is new to this station. You will follow all security protocols and report any concerns to my office immediately." Jake looked directly at Morden and smiled. "Of course, Security Chief. I am sure your systems are very thorough." As they walked through the station, Jake noticed everything. He counted guard posts and memorized the locations of security cameras. He observed which corridors had the heaviest traffic and which areas seemed to have restricted access. Amy walked beside him taking notes, but she was also watching the same things Jake watched. The aliens showed them to their quarters, which were located in the diplomatic wing of the station. The rooms were large and comfortable with beds designed for human physiology. Jake set his bag down and immediately began checking the walls and furniture for listening devices. Amy unpacked her equipment and began setting up what looked like normal communication gear, but was actually much more sophisticated than it appeared. "Sir," Amy said quietly, "our communication link to Earth is established. Should I send the arrival confirmation?" Jake nodded. "Send Standard Diplomatic Protocol 7. Let them know we are in position." That evening, there was a welcome dinner in the main council chamber. The room was vast with a domed ceiling that showed images of different homeworlds from across the galaxy. Tables were arranged in a complex pattern that represented the political relationships between different species. Jake was seated at a table with several minor delegates from peaceful trading civilizations. During dinner, Jake spoke with delegates from 12 different species. He remembered personal details about their families, their cultures, and their home planets. He spoke parts of their languages and asked thoughtful questions about their societies. The aliens were impressed by his knowledge and began to relax around him. But Jake was not just making friends. He was gathering intelligence. He learned which species had military alliances and which ones had territorial disputes. He discovered trade routes and resource dependencies. Most importantly, he identified which delegates had access to military information and which ones might be vulnerable to outside pressure. As the dinner continued, Jake noticed General Grimm from the Corvan Empire, watching him from across the room. Grimm was a large alien with red skin and sharp teeth. His species was known for being aggressive and militaristic. When their eyes met, Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Grimm smiled, showing his sharp teeth, and Jake smiled back with his diplomatic expression. Amy approached Jake near the end of the dinner. "Sir, I have completed my initial assessment of station security. There are some interesting patterns in their communication traffic." Jake nodded and they walked back to their quarters together. As they passed through the corridors, Jake noticed that Security Chief Morden was following them at a distance. Jake did not change his pace or look back, but he filed the information away for later use. Back in his quarters, Jake removed his suit jacket and rolled up his sleeves. For the first time, Amy could see the scars on his arms and the calluses on his hands that no diplomat should have. Jake opened his bag and checked the hidden compartments that contained equipment no civilian should possess. "Amy," he said quietly, "send a coded message to Earth using Channel 9. Tell them the target is confirmed and we are proceeding with the mission." Amy nodded and began typing on her equipment. "Sir, do you think they suspect anything?" Jake looked out his window at the stars beyond the station. "Not yet. But General Grimm is not stupid. We need to be very careful." 3 days had passed since Jake Morrison arrived at the Galactic Council Station. The diplomatic meetings had been boring discussions about trade routes and mining rights. Jake sat through each session, taking careful notes and asking the right questions. To the other delegates, he appeared to be exactly what he claimed to be, a human diplomat learning about galactic politics. But Jake was doing much more than diplomacy. During breaks between meetings, he explored the station. He memorized the layout of every corridor and identified all the security checkpoints. He learned the schedules of the guard rotations and mapped the locations of weapon storage areas. Amy helped him by accessing the station computer systems using equipment hidden in her communication devices. On the third night, Amy discovered something troubling in the communication logs. Strange energy signatures had appeared on the station long-range sensors. The signals were very faint and appeared to be background radiation from space debris. But Amy recognized the patterns from intelligence files she had studied on Earth. "Sir," she said quietly as they sat in Jake's quarters, "these energy readings match Corvan cloaking technology. There might be ships hiding near the station." Jake studied the data on Amy's tablet. The signals were definitely artificial and they were moving in formation patterns typical of military vessels. Someone was watching the station and they were being very careful not to be detected. "How many ships?" Jake asked. "At least 12, possibly more. The signals are scattered across a wide area, but they appear to be surrounding the station." Amy replied. Jake considered their options. As a diplomat, he should report this information to station security. But doing so would raise questions about how he had access to classified sensor data. It would also alert whoever was controlling the hidden ships that their presence had been discovered. The next morning, Jake decided to approach Security Chief Morden directly. He found the 6-armed alien in the security office studying routine patrol reports. Morden looked up when Jake entered and his large eyes focused on the human with suspicious interest. "Ambassador Morrison," Morden said in his clicking voice, "what brings you to my office?" Jake sat down in the chair across from Morden's desk. Security Chief, I am concerned about some unusual readings I noticed on the public sensor displays. There seem to be energy patterns that don't match normal space debris. Morden's 6 arms moved in patterns that Jake recognized as irritation. Human Morrison, you are a diplomat, not a sensor technician. The station sensors are monitored by trained professionals who know how to interpret the data. Jake leaned forward slightly. Of course, Security Chief. But during my military service before I became a diplomat, I learned to recognize certain energy signatures. The patterns I observed match those produced by advanced cloaking systems. This was the first time Jake had mentioned military experience, and Morden's attitude changed immediately. His arm stopped moving and he stared at Jake with new interest. You served in your species military? Morden asked. Jake nodded. I was an intelligence officer before I joined the diplomatic corps. That experience helps me notice things that might be important for station security. Morden activated his computer and pulled up the sensor logs from the past 3 days. The energy readings were there, but they were marked as cosmic background radiation. Morden studied the data more carefully and his expression grew concerned. These readings are unusual, Morden admitted, but they could have natural explanations. Space is full of energy phenomena that can create strange patterns. Jake stood up and moved to look at the display screen. Security Chief, may I suggest running a focused scan of Sector 7? If these are natural phenomena, the energy patterns should be random. If they are artificial, the patterns will show mathematical precision. Morden hesitated for a moment, then activated the deep space scanners. The results appeared on the screen within minutes. The energy signatures were definitely artificial and they were arranged in perfect geometric formations around the station. By the ancient codes, Morden whispered, there are ships out there. Many ships. Jake kept his expression calm, but inside he felt a surge of adrenaline. Security Chief, this could be a serious threat to the station. Should we alert Chairman Vextax? Morden was already reaching for his communication device when the office door opened. General Grimm from the Corvin Empire walked in without waiting for permission. The large red-skinned alien looked at the sensor display and smiled with his sharp teeth. Gentlemen, Grimm said in his deep voice, I see you have discovered our little secret. Morden's 6 arms moved to his weapons, but Grimm raised one hand in a peaceful gesture. Please, Security Chief, there is no need for violence. I am here to explain the situation. Jake remained standing near the display screen, but he shifted his weight slightly to be ready for action. General Grimm, what ships are those and why are they hidden? Grimm walked closer to the display and pointed at several of the energy signatures. Those are Corvin patrol vessels conducting routine security sweeps of this sector. We did not want to alarm the Council by announcing their presence. Morden's arms were still near his weapons. General, you should have informed station security of any military vessels in this area. This is neutral space under Council protection. Grimm's smile became wider. Of course, Security Chief. But the Corvin Empire has reason to believe there may be threats to Council security. We are simply taking precautions to protect all the delegates. Jake studied Grimm's expression and body language. The alien was lying and doing a poor job of hiding it. But Jake could not reveal how he knew this without exposing his own background and training. General Grimm, Jake said carefully, perhaps you could provide more specific information about these threats. As a diplomatic representative, I am concerned for the safety of all Council members. Grimm turned his attention to Jake and his eyes narrowed slightly. Ambassador Morrison, your concern is noted. But military security matters are not appropriate topics for diplomatic discussion. The tension in the room was increasing rapidly. Morden was suspicious of the hidden ships. Grimm was obviously planning something dangerous. Jake was trying to gather information without revealing too much about his own capabilities. Amy's voice came through Jake's communication device. Sir, you need to return to your quarters immediately. I have discovered additional information that requires your attention. Jake nodded to both aliens. Gentlemen, I hope this situation can be resolved peacefully. If you will excuse me, I have diplomatic reports to complete. As Jake left the security office, he could feel Grimm watching him. The Corvin general suspected something about the human diplomat, but could not identify exactly what was wrong. Jake walked calmly through the corridors, but his mind was racing with tactical calculations. Back in his quarters, Amy was waiting with new intelligence. Sir, I have been monitoring communication traffic between the hidden ships and the station. Someone inside the Council has been sending encrypted messages to Corvin space. Jake looked at the data Amy had collected. The messages were heavily encrypted, but the transmission patterns revealed their origin points within the station. Someone with access to high-level council information was working with the Corvan Empire. Amy, can you decode any of the messages? Not with our current equipment, sir, but I can track when they are sent and identify the approximate location of the transmitters. Jake considered their situation. Hidden Corvan ships surrounded the station. Someone inside was feeding intelligence to the enemy. General Grimm was obviously involved in something much larger than routine security patrols. And Jake was supposed to be a harmless diplomat with no military training or combat experience. Amy sent an encrypted message to Earth using Emergency Protocol 12. Tell them we have a developing situation and may need immediate support. Amy began typing on her concealed communication equipment. Sir, should I request backup? Jake looked out his window at the stars beyond the station. Somewhere in that darkness, Corvan warships were waiting for orders to attack. The peaceful council session was about to become a battlefield, and Jake was the only person who understood how dangerous the situation had become. Not yet, Amy. We need more information before we can act. But make sure our equipment is ready for immediate use. Jake opened his travel bag and checked the hidden compartments one more time. Inside were weapons and gear that no diplomat should possess. If the situation deteriorated, he would need every advantage he could get. That night, Jake attended another diplomatic dinner, but he spent most of his time observing the other delegates. He watched for signs that someone was nervous or acting suspiciously. He studied the aliens who had access to sensitive information and tried to identify which one might be working with the Corvan Empire. General Grimm was also at the dinner, and he kept watching Jake throughout the evening. Their eyes met several times across the crowded room, and each time Jake felt the intensity of the alien's suspicion. Grimm knew something was wrong about the human diplomat, but he could not prove it yet. As the evening ended, Jake made his way back to his quarters. The corridors were dimmer during the night cycle, and fewer aliens were moving through the passages. Jake walked carefully and listened for any sounds that might indicate he was being followed. Just before reaching his quarters, Jake heard footsteps behind him. The attack came during the deep night cycle when most of the station was quiet and dark. Jake was not sleeping. He sat in his chair by the window watching the stars and thinking about the hidden Corvan ships that surrounded them. Amy was at her equipment monitoring communication channels and tracking the encrypted messages that someone on the station was sending to enemy forces. The first explosion shook the entire station like an earthquake. Emergency lights began flashing red and alarm sounds filled the air. Jake jumped to his feet and grabbed his bag while Amy quickly gathered her most important equipment. Sir, the outer docking ring has been breached, Amy shouted over the noise. Multiple ships are attacking the station from all sides. Jake opened his bag and pulled out military gear that transformed him from a diplomat into a soldier. He put on tactical armor that had been hidden beneath false layers in his luggage. He strapped weapons to his body and checked ammunition supplies that no civilian should possess. In less than 60 seconds, Jake Morrison, the diplomat, had become someone completely different. Amy was also changing from an assistant into a military communications specialist. She activated equipment that had been disguised as diplomatic gear and began establishing secure channels to coordinate with Jake's movements. Another explosion rocked the station, and the lights went out completely. Emergency power activated after a few seconds, but many areas remained dark. Through his window, Jake could see Corvan attack ships firing weapons at the station's hull. Boarding pods were launching from the enemy vessels and attaching themselves to various sections of the structure. Amy, get me a connection to Earth immediately. Use emergency military channels and tell them we need the fleet here now. Amy's fingers moved quickly over her controls. Sir, I am transmitting our location and situation. Fleet Command is responding. Jake moved to his door and listened carefully. He could hear sounds of fighting in distant corridors. The Corvan soldiers were already inside the station, and they were moving through the passages, killing anyone they encountered. Jake opened his door carefully and looked out into the hallway. The corridor was empty, but Jake could see bodies on the floor near the elevator areas. Several alien delegates had been killed while trying to escape from their quarters. Jake felt anger rising in his chest, but he controlled his emotions and focused on tactical priorities. Amy, stay here and maintain communications. I am going to find the other delegates and get them to safety. Jake moved into the corridor with his weapon ready. He had trained for situations like this during his military service, but he had hoped never to need those skills again. Now the training took over and he became a different person entirely. The first Corvin soldiers Jake encountered were moving through the diplomatic wing, killing delegates in their rooms. There were 4 of them wearing heavy armor and carrying energy weapons. They moved slowly and confidently, because they expected no resistance from unarmed diplomats. Jake appeared behind them like a shadow. His first shot killed the rear soldier before the others knew they were under attack. His second and third shots dropped 2 more Corvin troops while they were still turning around. The 4th soldier managed to fire his weapon, but Jake had already moved to a different position, and the energy blast missed him completely. Jake's 4th shot ended the fight in less than 10 seconds. He quickly checked the bodies and took extra ammunition and a communications device from the dead soldiers. Then he moved toward the sounds of fighting that were coming from the main council chambers. Chairman Vextax and several other alien delegates were barricaded in the central meeting hall. Corvin troops were trying to break through the sealed doors using cutting tools and explosives. The aliens inside were trapped with no way to escape and no weapons to defend themselves. Jake studied the tactical situation from a hidden position in the upper galleries. There were at least 20 Corvin soldiers surrounding the council chamber. They had heavy weapons and were coordinated in their attack. Taking them on directly would be suicide even for a trained soldier. But Jake was not just any soldier. He was a specialist in asymmetric warfare, who had spent years learning how to defeat superior forces using unconventional methods. He moved through the maintenance areas and service, tunnels that connected different sections of the station. Jake's first target was the Corvin, communication specialist who was coordinating the attack on the council chamber. Jake approached through ventilation shafts and eliminated the soldier silently before anyone noticed. Without communication coordination, the Corvin troops became less organized and more vulnerable. Next, Jake used the station's own systems as weapons. He accessed maintenance controls and turned off gravity in sections where Corvin troops were positioned. The soldiers floated helplessly while Jake picked them off from protected positions. He also used environmental controls to flood areas with sleeping gas and blinding smoke. The Corvin commander realized his forces were under attack by someone with advanced tactical training. He began pulling his troops back into defensive positions and calling for reinforcements from the ships outside. But Jake anticipated these moves and positioned himself to intercept the reinforcements as they arrived. Amy's voice came through Jake's communication device. "Sir, I have been monitoring Corvin military channels. They are calling you the Ghost Soldier and requesting immediate backup. Their commander thinks there are multiple human special forces teams on the station." Jake smiled grimly as he prepared his next attack. Let them think that Amy. Fear is a weapon and confused enemies make mistakes. The battle continued for 2 hours as Jake systematically eliminated Corvin forces throughout the station. He moved like smoke through the corridors, appearing suddenly to strike at enemy positions, then disappearing before they could respond. His knowledge of the station layout and his military training gave him advantages that the Corvin troops could not match. But Jake was only one person, and the enemy had many soldiers. Gradually, he was being forced back toward the central areas of the station as more Corvin reinforcements arrived from their ships. The situation was becoming desperate, and Jake knew he could not hold them off much longer. During a brief pause in the fighting, Jake made his way back to the council chamber where the alien delegates were still trapped. He found a way to communicate with them through the sealed doors. "Chairman Vextax, this is Ambassador Morrison. I'm going to get you out of there." The alien leader's voice came through the communication system. "Ambassador Morrison, we heard fighting in the corridors. Are you safe?" Jake checked his ammunition and prepared for the most dangerous part of his mission. "Chairman, I need you to move everyone to the far side of the chamber and take cover behind the strongest furniture you can find. I am going to make an opening in the wall." Jake had saved his most powerful weapon for this moment. Hidden in his equipment was a military-grade explosive device that could blow a hole through the station's thick hull. He placed the charge against the wall of the council chamber and moved to a safe distance. The explosion was enormous and shook the entire station. When the smoke cleared, there was a large hole in the wall that led directly into the chamber where the delegates were hiding. Jake climbed through the opening and found himself facing more than 30 terrified aliens from different species across the galaxy. Chairman Vextax stared at Jake in amazement. The human diplomat was covered in armor and weapons and moved with the confidence of an experienced warrior. "Ambassador Morrison, who are you really?" Jake helped an injured delegate to his feet while keeping his weapon ready for more attacks. Chairman, I am Colonel Jake Morrison of the Human Colonial Defense Force. I volunteered for this diplomatic mission because we suspected the Corvan Empire was planning an attack. The alien delegates looked at each other in shock. They had believed humans were a peaceful species with limited military capabilities. Now they were seeing evidence that humanity had been preparing for war, while maintaining the appearance of diplomatic cooperation. Security Chief Morden limped toward Jake with 2 of his 6 arms hanging useless from battle damage. Colonel Morrison, your species deceived us about your military preparations. Jake met the alien's gaze directly. Security Chief, humanity prefers peace, but we are very good at war. We sent diplomats to learn about galactic politics and soldiers disguised as diplomats to protect our interests. Amy's voice crackled through Jake's communication device. Sir, long-range sensors are detecting new ships approaching the station. They are human vessels, and they will arrive in approximately 30 minutes. Jake nodded and turned to address the gathered delegates. Ladies and gentlemen, the immediate threat is not over. We need to get you to a secure location and prepare for the final phase of this battle. General Grimm's voice echoed through the station's communication system. Human Morrison, I know you can hear me. You have caused considerable damage to my forces, but you cannot win this fight. Surrender now, and I will guarantee the safety of the council delegates. Jake activated the communication system and responded. General Grimm, this is Colonel Morrison of the Human Defense Force. Your attack on neutral diplomatic territory was an act of war. Surrender your forces immediately or face the consequences. Grimm's laughter filled the chamber. The battle for the Galactic Council Station entered its most dangerous phase as more Corvan reinforcements arrived through the damaged sections of the outer hull. Jake Morrison found himself protecting over 30 alien delegates in the central council chamber while enemy soldiers advanced through multiple corridors toward their position. Jake had been fighting for 4 hours and his ammunition was running low. His tactical armor showed damage from several near misses with Corvan energy weapons. But his eyes remained focused and his movements stayed precise as he prepared defensive positions around the chamber. Amy established a command post using debris and furniture to create a protected area for her communication equipment. She maintained contact with approaching human forces while monitoring Corvan military transmissions to anticipate their next moves. Sir, the enemy commander is concentrating his remaining forces for a final assault on this position, Amy reported. They have approximately 60 soldiers moving through the main corridors and service tunnels. Jake checked his weapons and counted his remaining ammunition. He had enough supplies for perhaps 10 more minutes of intensive combat. After that, he would be forced to use captured Corvan weapons or fight with improvised materials. Chairman Vextax approached Jake cautiously. The tall alien leader had been watching the human soldier with growing amazement as Jake displayed tactical skills that exceeded anything the Council had expected from humanity. Colonel Morrison, Vextax said quietly, your species has hidden remarkable military capabilities from the galactic community. How long have you been preparing for conflict? Jake continued working on his defensive preparations while answering. Chairman Humanity has been studying galactic military technology and tactics since our first contact with alien species. We learned early that the galaxy can be a dangerous place for unprepared civilizations. Security Chief Morden was helping Jake position furniture and equipment to create barriers against incoming weapons fire. Despite his injuries, the 6-armed alien worked efficiently and asked intelligent questions about human military doctrine. Colonel Morrison, Morden said your combat methods are unlike anything in our tactical databases. Where did your species develop these techniques? Jake paused in his work and looked at the alien security chief. Security Chief, humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years before we reached the stars. We learned our lessons in blood and we remember those lessons well. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the corridors outside the chamber. Jake moved to the defensive positions he had prepared and signaled for the alien delegates to take cover behind the strongest barriers. Amy activated jamming equipment to disrupt Corvan communications and prepared to coordinate Jake's defensive actions. General Grimm's voice came through the station communication system once again. Colonel Morrison, you have fought bravely, but your position is hopeless. My forces surround you completely and you have nowhere to retreat. Surrender now and I will allow the council delegates to live. Jake activated his own communication device and responded. General Grimm, I have a counter-proposal. Withdraw your forces from this station immediately, and I will not destroy your command ship when the human fleet arrives." Grimm's laughter filled the chamber. "Colonel, your fleet is still 20 minutes away, and you will be dead in 5 minutes. You cannot threaten me from your hopeless position." Jake smiled and looked at Amy, who nodded and began typing rapidly on her equipment. "General, I think you misunderstand the situation. Amy, send the activation codes now." Amy transmitted a complex series of encrypted signals toward the hidden human ships that had been positioned around the station for weeks. Jake's diplomatic mission had been cover for a much larger military operation that placed human forces in position to respond to exactly this kind of attack. The first explosions came from outside the station as concealed human mines detonated against Corvin ships that had been trying to maintain their attack positions. The enemy vessels had not detected the weapons because they were designed to look like ordinary space debris until activated by the correct codes. "General," Grimm's confident voice suddenly became worried and angry. "What is happening to my ships? Colonel, what have you done?" Jake moved to one of the damaged walls where he could see space outside the station. Corvin vessels were exploding as hidden human weapons systems activated throughout the area. The enemy forces that had surrounded the Council station were being systematically destroyed by military assets they had never detected. General Grimm, humanity has been preparing for this conflict much longer than you realized. Every human diplomatic mission has been accompanied by covert military support positioned to protect our interests. The attacking Corvin soldiers outside the council chamber suddenly found themselves under attack from behind, as human special forces teams emerged from concealed positions throughout the station. Jake had not been fighting alone. Other human soldiers had been hidden among the diplomatic staff and station. Personnel waiting for orders to reveal themselves. Amy coordinated with the newly revealed human forces, using military communication protocols that she had kept hidden beneath her civilian equipment. Sir, Team Alpha is moving to secure the docking bays. Team Beta is eliminating remaining Corvin forces in the outer sections. Team Gamma is protecting evacuation routes for civilian personnel. Jake realized that the immediate tactical situation had changed completely. Instead of being trapped and outnumbered, he now had support from professional military units that could handle the remaining enemy forces. But he also knew that this battle was part of a much larger conflict that would reshape galactic politics. Chairman Vextax approached Jake with a mixture of respect and concern in his large, dark eyes. "Colonel Morrison, your species has demonstrated military capabilities that exceed our intelligence estimates. This changes everything about humanity's position in galactic affairs." Jake removed his helmet and looked directly at the alien leader. "Chairman, humanity did not want this conflict. We came to the Council seeking peaceful integration with galactic civilization, but we also came prepared to defend ourselves and our allies if attacked." The sounds of fighting in the corridors outside were diminishing as human forces eliminated the last Corvin soldiers. Amy received reports from team leaders throughout the station, confirming that enemy resistance was collapsing rapidly. "Sir, all Corvin forces have been neutralized or captured. The station is secure and medical teams are treating wounded personnel," Amy reported. But Jake knew the battle was not over. General Grimm still had ships in space, and reinforcements could arrive from Corvin territory at any time. The immediate threat to the Council delegates had been eliminated, but the larger strategic situation remained dangerous. Jake's communication device activated with a new voice. "Colonel Morrison, this is Admiral Lisa Grant aboard the UHS Defiant. Human fleet units are arriving at your position now. What is your tactical assessment?" Jake looked out at space where he could see human warships emerging from hyperspace jumps around the station. The vessels were larger and more heavily armed than anything the Galactic Council had seen from humanity before. "Admiral Grant, the station is secure, but we have a significant diplomatic situation developing. The Galactic Council has just learned that humanity possesses advanced military capabilities that we did not reveal during previous negotiations." Admiral Grant's voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to making difficult decisions. "Colonel, we are prepared to engage any remaining Corvin forces in this system. But our primary mission is to protect human diplomatic personnel and demonstrate our commitment to galactic peace." Jake turned to address the assembled alien delegates who had been listening to these military communications with growing amazement. The representatives from 47 different species were beginning to understand that humanity was far more formidable than anyone had suspected. Ladies and gentlemen, Jake said, humanity has maintained this deception because we believed peaceful integration was preferable to military confrontation. We hope to join galactic civilization as partners rather than conquerors, but when attacked we defend ourselves with everything we possess. Security Chief Morden stepped forward despite his injuries. Colonel Morrison, your species has demonstrated tactical abilities that suggest extensive military experience. How many wars has humanity fought? Jake considered how to answer this question honestly. Security Chief, humanity has been fighting wars continuously for our entire recorded history. We have learned hard lessons about survival, and we apply those lessons to everything we do, including diplomacy. General Grimm's voice came through the communication system one final time, but now it carried desperation instead of confidence. Colonel Morrison, you may have won this battle, but the Corvan Empire has fleets throughout this sector of space. This conflict is far from over. Jake activated the communication system to respond, but this time he was speaking, not just to General Grimm, but to the entire Galactic Council. General, your empire made a critical error when you attacked neutral diplomatic territory. You assumed humanity was weak because we preferred negotiation to warfare. You were wrong about our capabilities, and you were wrong about our resolve. The chamber fell silent as alien delegates absorbed the implications of what they had witnessed. The space battle outside the Galactic Council station was brief and decisive. Admiral Lisa Grant's human fleet emerged from hyperspace with precision timing that spoke of careful planning rather than lucky coincidence. The Corvan attack force found itself caught between the station's remaining defenses and human warships that demonstrated tactical capabilities far beyond what any galactic species had expected from humanity. Jake Morrison watched through the damaged windows as human vessels maneuvered with deadly efficiency around the larger Corvan ships. The enemy had superior numbers, but the human fleet used advanced tactics and weapons technology that quickly turned the tide of battle. Within 30 minutes, the surviving Corvan ships were either destroyed or retreating toward their own territory. Inside the station, medical teams were treating wounded delegates and assessing damage to critical systems. Jake had removed his combat armor and returned to wearing civilian clothes, but everyone who looked at him now saw something different. The mild-mannered diplomat was gone, and in his place stood a professional soldier who had just demonstrated exactly how dangerous humanity could be when threatened. Chairman Vextax called an emergency session of the surviving council members in a temporary meeting room since the main chamber had been severely damaged during the fighting. Representatives from 32 different species gathered to discuss what they had witnessed and what it meant for the future of galactic politics. Jake entered the meeting room with Amy at his side. She had also returned to civilian appearance, but her communication equipment was more sophisticated than before, and she carried herself with the confidence of a military specialist rather than a diplomatic assistant. Colonel Morrison, Chairman Vextax began, the Council requires an explanation for humanity's deception regarding your military capabilities. You presented yourselves as a peaceful species seeking integration with galactic civilization. Jake took his seat at the conference table and looked directly at each of the alien delegates before responding. Chairman Vextax, humanity is indeed a peaceful species that prefers negotiation to warfare. But we are also a practical species that prepares for the possibility that others may choose violence over diplomacy. The Zephyrian delegate raised one of her 4 arms to speak. Ambassador Morrison, your species concealed advanced military technology and highly trained special forces personnel. This suggests long-term planning for aggressive expansion rather than peaceful integration. Jake shook his head. Delegate Zephyr, humanity concealed our military capabilities because we hoped never to need them. We came to this council seeking trade partnerships and cultural exchange, but we also came prepared to defend ourselves and our allies if attacked by hostile forces. Security Chief Morden was present despite his injuries from the battle. His 6 arms moved in patterns that Jake now recognized as deep concern mixed with grudging respect. Colonel Morrison, your combat methods demonstrated tactical knowledge of Corvan military doctrine that should not have been available to diplomatic personnel. How long has humanity been gathering intelligence on galactic military forces? Jake considered how much truth to reveal to the assembled delegates. Security Chief, humanity has been studying all aspects of galactic civilization since our first contact with alien species. This includes military technology, trade systems, and political structures. We believe knowledge is essential for survival. Admiral Grant's image appeared on the communications screen as she joined the meeting from her ship. Council members, I am Admiral Lisa Grant, commanding the Human Defense Fleet. I want to clarify humanity's position regarding this incident and our future relationship with the galactic community. Chairman Vex Tax gestured for the Admiral to continue. Admiral Grant, the Council is very interested in understanding humanity's true military strength and intentions. Admiral Grant's expression was serious but not threatening. Council members, humanity maintains defensive military forces sufficient to protect our colonies and trade routes. We do not seek territorial expansion or aggressive conflict with other species, but we will defend ourselves and our allies with whatever force is necessary. The Nexari delegate who had welcomed Jake upon his arrival spoke in his musical computer voice. Admiral Grant, your fleet demonstrated tactical capabilities that suggest extensive combat experience. Has humanity been fighting wars that the Council was not informed about? Admiral Grant nodded. Delegate Nexari, humanity has been involved in conflicts with pirates, raiders, and hostile forces throughout our expansion into space. We have learned hard lessons about the need for strong defenses and the importance of being prepared for unexpected threats. Jake stood up and activated a holographic display that showed star charts of human territory. Council members, humanity currently controls or protects 17 star systems with 43 inhabited worlds. We have established trade relationships with friendly species and defended ourselves against aggressive neighbors. This experience has taught us that peaceful intentions must be backed by credible defensive capabilities. The display showed human military, installations, defensive positions, and patrol routes that revealed a level of organization and strategic planning that impressed even the most militaristic species. Represented on the Council, Colonel Morrison, Chairman Vextac said quietly, "Your species has been far more active in galactic affairs than we realized. Why did you not reveal this information during previous diplomatic contacts?" Jake looked at the alien leader with genuine respect. "Chairman, we revealed what we believed was necessary for productive diplomatic relations. Humanity prefers to be underestimated rather than feared, because fear often leads to unnecessary conflicts." General Grimm's voice came through the communication system one final time. His ship had escaped the battle, but he was broadcasting from beyond the system's boundaries. "Human Morrison, you may have won this engagement, but the Corvin Empire will not forget this humiliation. There will be consequences for your actions." Jake activated his communication device to respond. "General Grimm, your empire attacked neutral diplomatic territory and murdered innocent delegates. The consequences you face are the result of your own choices. If you choose war with humanity, you will discover that we are very good at fighting wars." The communication ended, and the meeting room fell silent as delegates considered the implications of what they had heard. Humanity had revealed itself to be a major military power that had been operating in galactic space for years while maintaining the appearance of a minor peaceful species. Amy approached Jake with a report from Earth. "Sir, Fleet Command has authorized full disclosure of our defensive capabilities to the Council. They want to establish formal military cooperation agreements with friendly species." Jake nodded and turned back to the assembled delegates. "Council members, humanity is prepared to share our defensive technologies and tactical knowledge with species that demonstrate genuine commitment to peaceful coexistence. We are also prepared to provide security assistance against hostile forces like the Corvin Empire." The offer created immediate discussion among the delegates as species representatives considered the advantages of allying with humanity versus the risks of opposing such a formidable military power. Chairman Vextax called for order and addressed Jake directly. "Colonel Morrison, the Council requires time to consider these revelations and their implications for galactic politics. In the meantime, what are humanity's immediate intentions?" Jake gathered his equipment and prepared to leave the meeting room. Chairman, humanity intends to continue participating in Council activities as originally planned. We still seek peaceful integration with galactic civilization, but we will do so as equals rather than as a minor species seeking approval from our betters. As Jake and Amy walked through the damaged corridors toward their quarters, they passed repair teams working to restore station systems. The alien workers stopped their activities to watch the humans pass. Word had spread quickly throughout the station about the deadly human diplomat who had single-handedly held off an entire enemy assault force. "Sir," Amy said quietly, "Earth has confirmed that our mission objectives have been achieved. The Council now understands humanity's true capabilities, and several species have already requested meetings to discuss alliance agreements." Jake nodded, but his expression remained serious. "Amy, we have revealed our hand to the galactic community. From now on, humanity will be seen as either a valuable ally or a dangerous threat. There will be no middle ground." They reached their quarters, where Jake began packing his equipment. The diplomatic mission was ending, but it had accomplished far more than anyone had expected. Humanity's position in galactic politics had changed permanently and irreversibly. Chairman Vextax appeared at their door as they prepared to leave. "Colonel Morrison, I wanted to speak with you privately before your departure." Jake invited the alien leader into the room. "Chairman, what can I do for you?" Vextax looked around the quarters that had been home to the human diplomat for less than a week. "Colonel, your species has taught us important lessons about the difference between appearance and reality. We believed we understood humanity's capabilities and intentions. We were wrong about both." Jake met the alien's gaze directly.